Hey everybody, Wayne here. Today I'm joined by my guest, Devin. Devin is here to talk about Heroes of the Bitter Harvest, a game he has designed that is being published by Lock and Load Publishing. It is the latest in their Lock and Load Tactical series. Right now it's being crowdfunded over on GameFound, which I'm going to have a link in the video description, and I'm sure we'll get it posted in the chat. So, Devin, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Glad you can make time. Kind of last minute. Kind of want to set it up with David Heath of those who don't know, owner of Lock and Load Publishing, and he's like, "Oh, that'd be a great idea." And then I'm like, I didn't hear anything from him. I better reach out to Devin myself. So,
well, evidently, what he told me is that when you got a hold of him like last week or week before, he said, "Yeah, we'll set it up with Devin," and we were supposed to have a meeting the next day, but the meeting fell through, and he just kind of forgot about it.
Sure, excuses. I see how it is. No big deal. That's why I figured, you know what, I'll just reach out to you and see if you had time. So, Vince, howdy, welcome. So, yeah, today, like I said, mainly we'll talk about Heroes of the Bitter Harvest. I kind of want to know about the game. Devin, you've and we'll people. I know more people will start trickling in, and we'll just get started though. Devin, you've talked about the game before. I've seen live streams, I've seen coverage of the game, but really it's been, the coverage has been focused on your fans already. It feels like, anyway. If the people who know Lock and Load Tactical, right? They're the ones who want, okay, what's the next game, right? Well, with me, I kind of want to talk about the game in general, from the perspective of either someone who's not familiar with it at all or has a passing familiarity. I want to pivot away from those like nitty gritty details that the longtime fans that they want to know exactly, which counter, which piece of artillery, and it better be the right one. Those are important. Those are important with tactical games, especially. But let's look at it from a perspective of, hey, getting into the game and getting into the system. So, first off, you just want to kind of tell me about Lock and Load Tactical in general. A quick explanation of kind of the system. Those who don't know about it.
Yeah, basically, Lock and Load Tactical is a squad-based World War II to moderns tactical game system, hex and counter. Each unit represents one leader or one hero, or one squad, or one weapons team, or one artillery piece, or one tank. It's not skirmish level where each unit is one man. It's just one step up from skirmish. So it's the tactical level, the squad level. It's not, I don't want to call it a heavy game. I come from a background of advanced squad leader, and for those who know the hex and counter community and know what advanced squad leader is, knowing it is the most difficult game out there, and there are people who love it. That's fine. I played it for almost 30 years. I can't do it anymore. It is nowhere near that. It is, of all the tactical systems out there, I'd say it's on the lower end of the complexity, and people may get a little bit off put by me saying that because they take a look at the rule book, and a rule book is like 270 pages long.
Right.
You have to look at it from, there's really only about 70 pages of the rules that you need to play, but it's also 12-point font, and we've got lots of pictures and everything. So to kind of put it into perspective, if you were to take our rule book and shrink it down to the font of most war game rules out there, it'd probably be 64 pages. We try to really, so the rule book may be very intimidating, but you can't let it be intimidating. There's print and play stuff in there that you can print out for your own scenarios. There's maps and counters. There's 4 scenarios in there. There's detailed walkthroughs, and it's available for free. If you want to take a look at our rule system, our full-length rule book is completely available for free. If you go to the Lock and Load Publishing website and go to the resources, it's under resources. We even have a smaller cut-down version. We call it our starter kit, which is the basic rules that you need, plus 4 scenarios, boards, counters. You can download it for free, print it out if you want. There is a purchase version if you want to purchase the starter kit to have our printed maps and counters. You can order that. I think that's like $15 on the store page. Okay. The game has been around for a long time. It was originally done, I think the original version, the original iteration of it was 2002.
I think Chet's a fan already. We got.
Chet.
Chet,
Chet. Chet and I have played games together.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yep.
Good. All right.
So, but the game system started off. The original iteration was Band of Brothers, published by Matrix Games, and I can't even remember who the original designer was. Like 2002. As right now, we have 9 full-sized boxed games plus at least a dozen historical modules / companions / scenario books. There's a lot of product out there, and we've done everything from World War II. We've got one module that covers some fighting in Afghanistan. When we went in, took out Saddam Hussein. There's actually even we've even got a game with a counter that's got the Saddam Hussein counter. Hypothetical modern 1985. Well, I can't even really call it.
Is he down in the Spidey hole?
Yeah. Well, no, you're actually trying to. He's in a truck, so.
Oh, in a truck.
Yeah. I think that one was a hypothetical. It's been a while since I messed around with that one. So we've got the modern. Call it modern. Everybody calls 1985, modern because it was, but it's not modern anymore.
Right.
So, but we do have also the Fallujah module, or not Fallujah, Black Hawk Down module, Day of Heroes. So we've got modern day stuff, and we're looking at doing more theaters, but there's only so many hours in a day that I can work on modules. So.
Yeah. I'm sure David wants to get to work on more. He's probably like, what's the next one you got? Like
exactly. I've got like 4 titles that I'm supposed to be working on.
Yeah, I did see there is based on the space infantry theme?
Space infantry. Yeah, that one.
We don't need to go. We'll save all the details for another show, but I didn't want to bring it up because I do have a soft spot for science fiction, especially like that serious, right? The wargaming science fiction, right? In which, yes, by the way, let's start an argument right away. War games and fantasy games, or excuse me, science fiction and fantasy can be war games.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's clearly not historical wargaming, obviously, but they can be war games. They can simulate within their own universe. But
most definitely,
Trying to fire up the chat here. So, okay, sorry, when I forgot to let them know. Sure. You heard how hard I am on people, and you're like, I don't think so. He ain't going on that. But he was ready as soon as I said something. Devin was ready. So, all right. What was I going to say? Oh, so just talking about rule books quick. And it's not the perfect example. The text is okay. This is a latest magazine game, and not to call it out at all, but obviously, like I can, it's decently heavy text. Again, it's not that bad, but I know we're talking about when it comes to the rule books. So your guys' rule books, you guys do larger fonts, lots of graphics, lots of pictures. This should be clear. So it's hard to say. Because we all want a way to directly compare things, and it should, and we want that because to make it easier to do recommendations, to decide what we like, what we want to pick up, right? Because we don't all have $50, $60, $80, $100 to just buy any game we want and just try it, right? So we want to kind of figure out ways to judge things ahead of time. And one of the things that we decided as Wargamers, right, is rulebook, the page count, right? How many pages does it have? Well, what's the font size? How many pictures are there? Are the examples of play? Are there design? Doesn't matter, right? We are like, what's the page count? 16 pages, 20 pages or less? I can handle that. More than 20? Oh, this is a heavy game. There's no way I can handle that. Except you guys do rule books that are longer, but it's not dense, dense text or anything like that. So not to call out this game that I'm playing right now, but I get it totally. So just a heads up, anyone, people who haven't played any of the Lock Mode Publishing games. From my personal experience, now I've not played Heroes of the Bitter Harvest. My experience with them, so I have had gotten one of those starter kits you mentioned years ago, kind of when I first got into wargaming, which for me was only 4 or 5 years ago. Really, the wargaming that we're looking at right now. I know old Grognard's been doing it for decades, and I'm coming in. I'm not actually young, but I do not have a lot of experience with war games, but I mean, I took to it. I loved it. As soon as I started playing, because I always loved history, right? That's one thing I think. Most of us, we loved history, right? And this is just, I didn't even know that wargaming in this sense existed. Just discovered it on my own on the internet. So anyway, I was looking over tactical systems, I was examining all the scales and a tactical, what's that mean? Okay, squads and fantastic. And I remember checking out different systems, and one of them was your guys's. I'd gotten a starter kit. I played it a little bit, and I had fun, but it's just, it's one of those things where you get the starter kit, you look at it, and maybe it sucks you into buying more right away. Maybe it doesn't. It didn't for me, and that wasn't because I didn't like it. It was just because man, there's so many games out there. There's so many things going on. So, but before we dive into why Heroes of the Harvest, maybe one that people want to look at, is talking about lock and load publishing in general. You guys, like I said, my experience with you guys, really high quality components, really big, heavy boxes. I did a lot of coverage of Space Infantry Resurgence when that came out, that Kickstarter, which this game's on GameFound, but we'll mention that again later. But when that one came, I had coverage on that one, and I know that I communicated with Blackwell a little bit on a expanded sequence of play, which you guys uploaded to your website, and I think to Board Game Geek as well, just because I love that game, and like I said, I did a bunch of videos on it. And the component quality, the graphics, all that stuff is excellent. So had a big rule book, had a real big rule book, but not a heavy game whatsoever, just a larger rule book because it contained more content, kind of spread out. Again, lots of examples of play, things like that. So other than that, I'm trying to think. I know I have a couple other games. I'm blanking right now, and that's okay. We'll kind of move along. So we talked about Lock and Load Tactical as a system, and Devin, you mentioned that, it appears heavy, but you consider it lighter, and you kind of, you're right. It's one of those things, it's a dance, right? If you don't want to turn people off either way, right? You don't want to say, well, it's a lighter system, it's easier to play. And then you have people who, take this very seriously and they need absolute simulation, say, well, then I don't want to play it. But if you say it's too heavy, it is heavy. I mean, there's a lot to it. You're going to scare off any casuals, right? You scare off people who just want a game they can set up and play. So I think, and I'm not the expert on here. I think your game probably falls somewhere in the middle, right? In reality, it's probably a game that's not a light game, but and there's no need to pretend it is. But I've looked through and and that's actually what I totally forgot. I played Lock and Load Tactical, the digital. When you guys came out with the digital one, I played that. I do have a couple videos on my channel playing that. They were super unpopular, I think, because people wanted to see me playing. Because I'll play Hex and Counter games, I'll play your guys' games. My Space Infantry videos are super popular. But when I did the digital stuff, I think people were like, video game, like play a video game, like we'll watch someone else, or I'll just play it myself. Okay, fine. So I stopped doing that. But my experience with it was that it's very playable. And leading into that with Heroes of the Bitter Harvest. So, is it a good entry point for a wargamer who is new to the Lock and Load Tactical system? Obviously you're a little biased, Devin, but what are your thoughts on that, and kind of what makes it a good one? We talked about earlier, the scenarios. Are there smaller scenarios to get you started, or do you just throw you in?
There are 12 scenarios that come within Heroes of the Bitter Harvest, and then we have an expansion that is going to be released at the exact same time. You can pick it up as part of the GameFound project called Enemy at the Gates, and that's got 10 scenarios in it. So there's 22 scenarios total. There are smaller scenarios. There are good beginner scenarios. I did work several of those in. There are, however, a bunch of really big scenarios in there as well. As a designer, I come from a background with the Advanced Squad Leader system, and they tend to be a little bit more on the meaty side. Is this a good game for a beginner into the Lock and Load Tactical system? Well, the Lock and Load Tactical system, I don't think is that difficult. It's like you were saying, it's in the medium range. The scenarios, a lot of the scenarios are good for beginners. Probably less than half of them. The other of them, I'm not going to say they're advanced, but they use more advanced concepts than just go out and kill something. You have variable objectives, you have removable objectives, you've got stepped progression in some of the scenarios where you have to do certain things in order to progress, not to progress the scenario, but to win the scenario. And the reason for that is a lot of people have been complaining that a lot of the previous Lock and Load Tactical scenarios were way too small. And, in some cases they were right. Some scenarios only have 4 to 6 counters on the board. My biggest recommendation is, if you're interested in the Lock and Load Tactical, we offer everything pretty much for free on the web. So go download our rule book, go take a look at the starter kit, download the starter kit, check it out for yourself. So is it a good Lock and Load Tactical is probably a better game for someone to try to get into tactical wargaming than many others out there. It's definitely a lot easier than ASL, the Advanced Brooks system, a lot of other tactical systems out there. This one specifically may not be the best for complete beginners because, like I said, there are some more advanced scenario concepts that I've used in it. But that's not saying that the game is difficult or hard. It's just that the scenarios, like I said, are just a little bit more advanced than what we've seen in previous scenarios. And again, that's just my bias coming from an ASL background and using the design practices I use with that and integrating them into Lock and Load Tactical. But there are easier scenarios in there. First scenario and the 12th scenario, infantry only. I mean, they're very basic. They're very easy. So there are scenarios that are a good entry point in. But yeah, I think it more comes down to the system itself, and it's not a difficult system. As we kind of, it's not a grognard chamber. It's not a game for what we call rivet counters. You know, the guys who will complain, oh, that Panzer 3J has got the wrong number of spokes on the forward traction. Nah, this game is not for that. I kind of like to describe it as it's World War II, the movie in game format. So there's a lot of narrative experiences into it. It's kind of, I don't want to call it high fantasy because that is absolutely the wrong word to use for it. But it is when you're playing it, it's like you're watching a movie. Yeah. So, and it's got like that narrative
storytelling, narrative to it, right? You're not, it's not dry, right? There's some richness to it that extends beyond. And I think that's helped by the graphics, helped by the art, it's helped by the large meaty counters and the beautiful maps, right? And that's something, like I said, you guys do a good job on. I've not played this game, so I can't comment on Heroes of the Harvest as a design, but I can say that you guys in general, pretty much every game I've ever seen from you guys is that beautiful production, right? And so then the gameplay can be helped by that. And I think something like Lock and Load Tactical or a tactical system in general, I think and a lot of people are going to appreciate that, right? I mean, yes, there's those people, like you said, who they don't, the rivet counters, they don't need art on there because, they know exactly how many rivets are on that tank. They don't need to see the art because the art probably has one too many rivets or not enough. They don't need to see that. It takes them out of it. But I think for the majority of people, they appreciate that and they appreciate the look of these games. I know that, let's see, we have Joe, cannot wait for the new solo system in Bitter Harvest. Yep. So we're going to talk about that, Joe, for sure. Go back a little. Dave just set up for higher page counts, lots of graphics or gameplay examples to a short rulebook with few graphics, gameplay, pictures, examples. Right. And that's, you guys, if anyone's watched my reviews and my thoughts, poor rulebooks, huge turnoff. And I will call you out on a poor rulebook. I will call people out on poor rulebooks, but I think that's, and it's not, because I don't think that's me, nitpicking. I think that a rule book can make or break a game from the get-go, right? From before they even get to play it, right? That's because for most people, that's how they learn to play it. Yeah. Now, maybe they watch a video or two videos. I know I do a lot of tutorial videos. A lot of other great people out there do them. I know that Gimpy Gamer does videos for you guys, right? He does
He does our boot camp videos.
Boot camp videos. Yep. Sorry, that's what I was thinking of the term. So I know he does boot camp videos for you guys, which are fantastic. I think that my first recommendation when people are struggling maybe with just a rule book, but they're just not picking it up. It's not quite grokking. It's not clicking. I'll say, hey, watch a video. If I have one, hey, watch mine. But if it's someone else, watch some videos on it. A lot of times that you have that sort of visual element more than just the text, right? Which ties into the examples and pictures. If you have lots of those in your rule book, you're giving that visual element, not a page of how to determine line of sight and that it's just text, but actual, hey, here's some examples of line of sight in this game.
We in our rule book for the line of sight from the hills, I think we spend 3 pages worth of examples going over how hill line of sight works. So I'm under normal circumstances, most games would probably just put a paragraph, maybe 1 or 2 examples. Now we dedicate 3 pages to it because we know it's kind of a little bit more of an advanced. So, and we want the big pictures on there. And there are literally, I think, like 6 or 7 different examples of hill line of sight in the rule book for it. So
awesome. I love to hear that. Yeah. So for those what are we, about 20 minutes in? So those who missed the beginning of the show, we're talking with Devin from Lock and Load Publishing about Heroes of Bitter Harvest, the latest Lock and Load tactical game in the series. It is being crowdfunded right now over on GameFound. There is only 5 days left.
5 days, yep.
So a link in the description. I just commented a link as well. So check it out now. Check it out later. And we'll take a look at the actual page itself here in a little bit, in just a second. And yeah, I mean, check it out for yourself, guys. But I wanted to get Devin over here. You know, this isn't a recommendation of it. This is just, hey, I want to talk about the game, especially since I heard and saw that it has a solo module, solo assistant, solo system built in. You had my attention. You know, now you what is it? Now you have my interest, or whatever the quote is. I butchered it, but I'm interested. So, you know, it has a solitaire system, Devin. Want to kind of talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Well, the solitaire system that we have had a solitaire system for.
Yeah. Tell me. I know you guys. So you got one for, sorry. Yeah. I think you were going right down the path that I was thinking, was talk about that. And then, yeah, you can fill us in on this game. So
we have had a solitaire system for the lock and load tactical system for several years now. And Sean Drulinger has done just an outstanding job. Basically, it originally started as the solitaire system that Academy Games had for, what is it? Conflict of Heroes.
okay.
And they had a solitaire setup system that they used for one of their games, and we basically liked it so much that we licensed it from them. And Sean Drulinger was the one who basically took that and ran with it and expanded the solitaire system. Our solitaire system's been out for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years now. And it's kind of a generic, so it can apply to any of our tactical games.
Yeah.
And it does a really good job. We also went ahead and used it in our Nations of War, World at War series of games. So if you kind of know how the lock and load tactical system, solo system works, you'll be able to slide into the solo system for Nations of War and World at War relatively easy. It's pretty much similar concepts.
Yeah.
But what we started deciding to do is that the original flow charts and some of the original cards probably could have used a little bit of an update, and needed to, we over the years we've discovered, it's like, the flowcharts really don't cover this real well. Maybe Sean should rewrite them. So we decided, going forward with all of our full length game systems, that we are going to include a solitaire system with each of our game systems. So Heroes of the Bitter Harvest, we're looking at Heroes of Grenada next. That's probably going to be the next lock and load tactical module. That's going to have its own solitaire system. I'm looking at doing Heroes of Pegasus Bridge eventually. That's the next big project. That's going to have its own solitaire system, and it's going to be based on the original lock and load tactical solo cards, but they're going to be tailored for each game specifically. So you're going to see us reworking the flow charts and some of the cards, especially the random events, and how aggressive some of these cards can play sometimes. There have been questions people have been asking. It's like, well, I already own the lock and load tactical solo system. Why would I want to use this one? Well, this one is specific for Bitter Harvest. And the other solo systems is still completely 100% usable, because we've got 9 other games plus hundreds of scenarios out there that you can still use the original the original solo system. Even if you could even use the old solo system with the new setup. We just think the new setup is a little bit better, because again, we had Sean go through, we reworked the flow charts a little bit, we reworked some of the cards, and for the biggest thing, the random events are more specific for the fighting in where Bitter Harvest takes place.
Okay.
And actually, let me go ahead and share my screen so we can show off.
Graphics for us. All
right. I do.
Ooh. Expect nothing less from Lock and Load Publishing.
All right, you should have.
You throw that up there. Ooh, let me make it. Hang on.
Yeah.
Oh, what do we got?
I'm not sure I can make that. Yeah, I can zoom in a little bit.
Maybe zoom in a little bit. So we got fully. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah. So. All right, so basically, this is one of the new solo cards. If you're familiar with the Lock and Load Tactical Solo system, I mean, you're going to be able to slip into this real easy. What we did kind of change is in the upper right-hand corner, we have got these 2d6 now. So even if you don't like using dice, and I know there are a lot of people out there who don't like using dice, they prefer drawing cards. We used to have a single d6 up here. We now have 2d6, so you can cut down on the number of cards you have to draw, because sometimes, for the most part, most dice rolls in Lock and Load Tactical are 1d6, but they're also 2d6 for ordnance to hit, morale checks, and stuff like that. So we gave that option. So if you just need one, just look at the brown number. If you need 2, it's right there. And so basically, the way the solo system works is the AEO, the active enemy opponent,
Okay.
is the AI for, but I often want to call it the computer AI, but it's not the computer AI. It's
Right,
just
right,
AI.
right.
So what you have is you have a deck of cards, and whenever the opponent that you're playing against is supposed to do something, you draw a card. And so you have a series of threats up at the top. And the threat is, all right, if there's anything that is within 1 hex of an enemy unit, look to see if you can do this command. Enter melee, overrun if firepower greater than the target PU player unit. If not, fire. So basically what you're looking
Okay.
at, you look at 1 hex,
Oh,
all the counters on the board, all the enemy counters at range of 1. It will choose one of those to enter melee or overrun if the firepower that is in that stack is greater than the target of the target's firepower of the player unit. If none of those happen, then it will fire at point blank range.
okay.
If you don't have any units that are adjacent to an enemy or range 1, then you look at the second one, which is range 2. And this is fire at closest vehicle. Okay, so you have, if you've got an anti-tank weapon, okay, it'll fire at the closest vehicle. If you don't have a closest vehicle, you lay smoke. And if you can't lay smoke, then you'll end up moving. And then if that command doesn't work, you go down to execute counter actions. And there's a big flow chart depending on if the AEO, if the bot, as it were, is playing
Mhm.
attacker or defender, it has its own flow chart. And then you go to that. And then, even if that command doesn't work, you go down to battlefield situations where you now start looking at, all right, now we're not looking at units that are 1 hex away from something or 2 hexes away from something. Okay, highest firepower AEO closest to a player unit that's just acted. All right, so basically that means, all right, I got a stack of these units here. They're 4 hexes away from a player unit stack that just acted. They're going to fire on them. So, all right, you probably moved. The bot is going to get the moving bonus firing on you. What if that doesn't happen? Well, then you go down to the next command, shaken AEO closest to a player unit. Dynamic move towards terrain with plus terrain modifier towards target player unit. All right, well, you've got the bot has got a shaken unit, and it's a 3 hexes to a player unit. It's going to try to move towards terrain with a plus terrain modifier. If there are no shaking units and they're already in positive modifiers, just go down to the next one. Highest firepower AEO farthest from player unit with lowest terrain modifiers. Now, those of you who may have seen the original cards, a lot of the cards weren't this detailed with the specific orders. We realized we had to put in a little bit more detail, and Sean
Mhm.
literally killed himself practically putting together all these
Hopefully
charts.
not literally, but yeah.
Close enough. I mean, I
Of
think
course.
we definitely contributed to his
He
alcoholism.
he has been AWOL for a while. I haven't seen him, so I'm worried. Send help.
So we in a tactical system, there are such a massive number of potential things that you can do in the game. So we had to expand the cards to make sure we take into account all these different possibilities, working in how aggressive we wanted the deck to be. There are cards that you can add in that will make the deck even more aggressive. It's a 1-star or 2-star. We've got one star and 2-star cards, which basically 1-star is kind of your average. 2-star, it's a little bit more aggressive, and it's kind of like a higher power AI. We like to call it. But yeah, it's basically pulling a card and
Okay.
just reading the conditions from top to bottom until you find a condition that works. Now, a lot of times, a lot of people say, well, I wouldn't do that. If I was playing this game and I was the opponent, I wouldn't do that move. It's like, well, the point of playing solitaire is so you're not playing yourself and you're
It does
not
something
going
different, maybe. Maybe it would
exactly.
be what you do or you would want to do, but maybe it would be something completely different you wouldn't even think of, right?
And the point is to try to it's not supposed to do what you're
Yeah.
doing, because your opponent, unless you're playing your twin, your opponent's probably not going to do what you're going to do. And there have
Yeah.
been several times I've played this in past a lot, and I've come down, it's like, I don't see anybody really doing it, but let's go ahead and do it anyways. And then like 2 turns later, I'll sit back and go, oh yeah, I just lost the game because he did that back then.
Like it worked.
Yeah,
Trust the system.
trust the deck. I mean,
Yep.
that's the biggest thing I can say is trust the deck.
Mhm.
All right, so and there's 60 some odd of these cards, and there are flow charts to go along with, so you can decide, all right, if you've got 2 units of the same that fulfill the same requirement, here's a flow chart to help you decide which one. But one of the things we've also included as well, and let's go ahead and slide all the way down to the bottom, is we changed how the random events work. Used to be the cards, the AEO cards would sometimes have a random number at the bottom. Let me go back up to one of the previous cards. Yep, I went way too far down.
Oh, you got all the cards there. You're like,
oh yeah, no, I've got well, not all of them. I've got
them.
most of them. So it used to be on. Let me go ahead and zoom out a little bit so you can see the entire card. But like down here, you've got this little red explosion here. That means this is an offensive card. If the bot is playing on the attack, then you'll stack the deck with the attack cards. There are also defensive cards if the bot's on defense. But there also used to be image of a couple dice, and that was a chance of a random event occurring. And if you had a random event occur, you rolled the dice. If the dice was higher than the number, like if it was a 9 and you rolled a 9 or higher, then you would go to another chart and you would have a random event. Well, we wanted, and the events were so generic, it wasn't even funny, because the system at the time was made for all of the tactical systems that we had. Well, for going forward, the random events are going to be more specific to the battle types. So say if we do a Battle of the Bulge scenario, or Battle of the Bulge game pack, I'm not saying that we're working on it, I'm just using an example.
You heard it here first, folks. Hold them to
it. You know that there's going to be there's snow, so you can put in we can put in a random card that, snow flurries, all line of sight is reduced to X number of hexes or whatever. So it gives us more flexibility in the random events. And so in this one, I've got 10, 12 random events in it. So we got an AEO, and so whenever you draw these, you may draw an action event card for a random number. Whenever you're pulling it for the dice number in the upper, you ignore it. Whenever you pull this as an actual action for the AEO, again, the active enemy operator, if you want to call it that, the bot, the AEO is the bot. If you're pulling this, yeah, the AEO is the bot. That's the best way to put it. So if you draw one of these cards to try to figure out what the bot is going to do, and you get an action event, well, then you get to do the action. For the example, this one, the AEO may play 2 order cards during this impulse. So basically, it's going to activate 2 units during its impulse instead of the normal 1. And once used, place this card in the discard pile. And we've got another one. We are not done. Randomly remove, if you pull this, randomly remove 1 activation mark, remove, fire, ops complete, etc. from any MM multi-man counter or SMC single-man counter. This unit can now activate as normal in this or as a sequent impulse. Roll a d6 to see which side this plays. So this could affect your side. It could affect the bot side. And with all these cards, all the scenarios are set up that when you put the deck together, the bot deck together, it'll tell you which random events to place in the deck. So not only are all of these random events specific, they're going to be specific for the scenario. So for like this minefield attack, you're probably not going to run into minefields if you're doing an armor and armor engagement, meeting engagement in the middle of a wheat field someplace. You're probably going to run into minefields if someone's on defense and have been there for a while. So the scenarios also are going to be specific on what random events you can have. Plus, there's also a variable number of those times that those events are going to happen. There may be 5 random events that you put into the deck, but only 3 of them are going to happen. So even if you know, all right, these are the 5 events, only 3 of these are going to happen, and there is possible that one of these is going to happen more than once. That goes more to a lot of the fog of war, so you're never really certain which random events you're going to see, because there's usually more random events than events are going to happen. So it's just a little bit of replayability we wanted to throw into the game with the random events and make them truly random, being based on a card system. So yeah, and like I said, all these are all specific to the scenario. And like this one, back into the fight, randomly select a half squad that has been reduced from a full squad and return it to being a full squad. Roll d6 to see which side benefits. Sometimes it'll only affect the bot. Sometimes it'll affect either side regardless. Sometimes it'll affect the player side. And again, it's just we wanted to try to have as much replayabilities with these cards as possible.
Absolutely.
So,
I know before we dive into that, I had another question about the speaking of replayability. We're talking about there's like a randomized setup, but before we dive into that, I know Tim here. So we talked about this a little bit. How difficult is this system for beginners? So Tim, I don't know if you mean the system. So you mean the lock and load tactical system or the solo system? I assume you mean lock and load tactical in general. Just I'll speak from my experience. I would say that my experience is limited. Let me be clear, but my experience is messed around with the starter kit a few years ago, and then I played the digital version, which at the time anyway, I know it didn't have a tutorial. I don't know if it does now. So it was basically me like kind of trying to learn it.
there is a series of video tutorials for
okay. So look at me as someone maybe that is like you, maybe that has very little experience with it, or I have a little, not none, but a little. Tim says yes in general, how difficult. So the system definitely not easy, but as we touched on earlier, and at least in my experience, I think that it could be it's deceiving if you look at the rulebook length. You look at those, you count those. If you're counting pages, don't do that with lock and load publishing, because if you count pages, you're going to have a heart attack, and you're not going to think you can even play the game at all. That's not true. They have large text, lots of pictures, lots of examples of play, lots of information in the rule books. It is not a old school style, column of text with like maybe a little counter graphic here and there. It's a lot different than that. So Devin, you want to touch on it again with the system? Just again,
yeah, really. It's going to be lock and load tactical is probably on the easier scale for most tactical hex encounter games. Again, don't be intimidated by the rulebook size. Most rulebooks today are 8 or 10 point font. We use 12 to 14 point font. And I was talking to Blackwell one day, and he says that when you use an 8-point font compared to a 12-point font, the 12-point font adds like 60% more pages to the rule book. That's just how massive the difference in the font size is. My recommendation is a beginner can grasp it. A beginner can read the rule book and grasp it. And like I've said before, we have the rule book available for free on our website, lockandloadpublishing.com. Just go there. It's under the resources. Just download it for free. You can print it out if you want. We have a starter kit that is just the rules itself, plus there's 4 scenarios, a couple maps, couple sheets of counters that you can print out on your own. So really, if you want to see if the system is for you, you don't even have to invest a dime to check it out. Because I mean, honestly, let's admit it. In today's gaming society, games are getting more and more and more and more expensive. So sometimes, is this easier or harder than, say, Nations at War? Probably a little bit more difficult than Nations at War. Nations of War is honestly probably one of our easiest systems. But if you can understand the concepts that are in Nations at War, you'll be able to grasp a lot of the concepts that are in Lock and Load Tactical. And one thing I want to say, again, even though the rules, the base rules are like 77 pages and, like I said, 12-point font with lots of pictures, you're probably using 10% of the rules 90% of the time, and 90% of the rules 10% of the time. So as long as you know the basics of how to move, how to shoot, and all that other stuff, you'll be able to breeze through it with no problem. There are going to be situations like, all right, so I'm firing a high explosive round at somebody in a building. How does that work? Then you go to the rule book. But yeah, here's a good example of the rules. And I mean, honestly,
table of contents, you're like, oh, a bunch of text. This is the table of contents. And yes, you're going to see, 280, it gets to 287 pages. Oh man, oh no, I'm doomed. Well, but let's start looking at, the counters, multi-man counters, right? I mean, so we're talking, 1, 2, 3 pages. It's just iconography. It has the counters, explaining what's on them. The different types, single man counters, mounting its vehicles, etc. And we're not trying to learn the game today, but I just want to look through it and show that, okay, you can see how page after page, it's the counters very large, explaining what's on them, what firepower is, range is, what each of the things on the front and back mean. And then you get into the text. I mentioned this a little bit. You look at this text, there's pictures, the text is spaced pretty evenly versus, something like even this. Again, not to call the game out because I just got this game and I'm just enjoying it right now. But, like it's a lot tighter even in this. And this isn't even a heavy game at all. This is just a magazine game, right? So just to look at it quick, again, we're not trying to learn the game, anything like that, but those who aren't familiar with it, and I just checked this quick while Devin was talking. I just Googled lock and load tactical core rules and then followed a couple links, and I was able to pull this up. So like he's mentioned before a couple times, you can go get this for free to download, right? Read through the rules. No, I mean, I'll be honest, I wouldn't recommend, probably, even if you're interested in it, I don't think I would recommend you hey, yeah, go ahead, download this and read the 200 pages and you'll know if you want the game or not. Probably not going to be the best way. Check it out, check out the rules, and then go watch a video. Maybe hit up some of Gimpy's boot camp videos, or I'm sure there's plenty of people that do lock and load tactical playthroughs on YouTube, things like that. Or get the digital game, which, like I said, I have a little bit of experience playing. It is the same core system with that. So, absolutely. Now let's go ahead. I do want to pull up before I forget, since we are talking about it here. Let's go ahead and pull up. Get us out of there. Sorry, Joe. You got the solo season also has scenario solo setups. Yes, so we'll
be touching on that.
We will touch on that. Devin, remind me if I forget to bring it up, but we will touch on that. That is, I think, again, a big part of it of my interest. Many reasons. Let me get rid of this. Oops, sorry. There we go. Okay, so you guys see that pretty clear? Okay. So looking at the actual game found, again, the link is in the video description, so you guys should be able to click the show video description, and then I put it in the chat a little bit ago, but I don't want to put it again because I don't want you guys to click away. I want you guys to watch the video. But looking at the page for it again, we only have 5 days left on it. It's fully funded, so and Lock and Load Publishing's been around for a while. I don't expect any issues on that. 140% funded actually. So congrats, guys, with 5 days to go. Good job there. Looking at it, you start looking at in this handsome fella on the front here.
I don't know about that,
but so you get to read about the game a little bit. Here's the Bitter Harvest. It covers the German. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, guys. Don't click off yet. It covers the German 1942 summer offensive in South Russia, codenamed Case Blue. Okay, so you get all kinds of, obviously, scenarios depict the vicious and brutal fighting across the steppes and mountains of southern Russia. So it's going to have a unique flavor, I'm sure, different than the other Lock and Load tactical games. When I was playing it on the digital one, I was actually playing, I want to say it was one of the Vietnam.
Yep.
Scenarios. It was, I'm sure, vastly different than this will be. I had a lot of fun with it, but I'm sure it'll be vastly different, which is appreciated. If each game is different, you kind of get a different flavor. What theme do you like? I mean, you like everything? Okay, then pick whichever one you want, but get them all. Gameplay. We talked about a lot of stuff. I wanted to look at some of the maps and stuff, because I know that some of these pictures here. Again, we saw this in the rule book, but the maps, I think they look great. I don't know if there's any maybe close-ups of the maps. I don't have any prepared on that. My apologies, but I know that it comes with 7 standard and then 4K X map, so it comes with those larger ones as well.
Yep. We've got with the larger
all the stretch goals, right? So that was another thing you guys did. You basically said, okay, we're just gonna unlock all the stretch goals, just make it all available, which I think that most people, especially war gamers, are gonna appreciate. I'm not trying to give people whiplash scrolling through here, but just looking at them, and we looked at the counters a little bit. You can see, I've talked about this again. The art, the graphics, everything appears clear, easy to read. I know it was. Then my dabbling in the system sure looks like it here. I think it's appreciated, and I think that what my feeling with Lock and Load Tactical is that it's not something that you just throw on the table. If you've never played before, throw on the table and you're going to play through an entire scenario without checking the rule book. But I feel like there's a lot here, but I don't think it's overwhelming if you take your time to learn it step by step. And I know we touched on, Devin, whether You know, is this the game to get into the system with? Maybe, maybe not, right? There's certainly games that maybe have scenarios with just even fewer counters, right? That
Oh, yes,
maybe
yes.
that if you were intimidated, and that's not a negative on someone, if someone looks at this and says, I'm intimidated by this, okay, that doesn't mean the system's not for them either. You know, it may be that, okay, you're just overwhelmed looking at all this. I know that if I look at something and I've never experienced it, I may feel overwhelmed. That doesn't mean though that it's not for them. It just means that maybe, you know, they need to kind of see the on, I call it, you know, on ramp, right? The on roading of getting someone involved with it. It is not always simple, right? That's the hard part, is getting you into it. Playing it once you know the rules, that's the easy part. So getting them to that point, because I think from what I've seen with you guys playing, you know, once you're comfortable with the rules, I mean, you flow through the game. The game flows pretty well. You're not struggling. Complexity 5 out of 10 medium. And that's kind of where I feel it is. Again, I'm not the expert on the system, but I feel like from almost as an outsider perspective, I think that feels about right. So that's not overly intimidating to me. But obviously, looking at the components, you get a ton of stuff. Like 6 counter sheets, 570 plus counters, all individually die cut, pre-rounded, correct?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah,
We
I mean, that's the usual
our
with you guys.
Our,
So
our counters are some of the most beloved in the industry. I like to think they're really big because honestly, David and I are getting old and we can't read small numbers on counters anymore. We figure most of our audience base is the same way. So let's make the counters really big with really big fonts so we don't have to grab a magnifying glass to read the counters.
absolutely, absolutely, and I think everyone appreciates that. You know what I mean? This isn't
Oh, yeah.
the modern. I don't think that going forward, and this is maybe this conversation we can have another time as well, but you know, the future of wargaming isn't going to be just, not to say that they can't be, but it's not going to be, you know, really small half-inch counters, you know, really dense and such. I mean, I think you're going to see more of embracing, you know, history, embracing what do I want to say, the like accuracy, right? But then combining that into games that look good, that you put on the table and they look good. You can take that picture, put it on Facebook, put it on Twitter, and it looks good. But you're also having a good experience. You're learning something. You're reliving history. I think combining those things, right? It's nothing to be afraid of. It's something to embrace. So, and as Jacob says, you know, tough guy on the cover new into this game until he means business, getting his tanks into the fight. He
Thank you,
really
Jacob.
does like mean business on there. So, so a whole bunch of, I mean, we're not covering every little thing, but man, ton of content as expected. I'm sure it's going to be, my mailman, when they get the box, is going to be like, what the heck? So we looked at the counters in the rulebook already, but ton of good stuff.
The box weighs in at almost 9 pounds.
9 pounds. God.
with all the stretch goals in it.
Yep. System core rules, again, the 5.1 rules here. I just Googled it and found them pretty quick, but they're right here. It looks like takes you to Lock and Load Publishing's website to download them. So I know you have module rules. This game comes, you have the base rule book, you have module and scenario rules. And then now let's get to, I don't want to skip over too much, but I want to get to, solitaire system we talked about, and let's talk about the random scenario setup and all that. If you don't want to talk about that stuff. Yep. Because I thought when I heard that, I was like, whoa, that sounds awesome. So go ahead.
One of the biggest complaints and comments that we've heard about the solitaire system is that there are people out there, a large number of them, who definitely want to give up all control to the bot, even so much to go as far as setup. So we realized that we needed, in addition to upgrading and updating the solitaire cards and updating the flowcharts, probably be a good idea if we put in a way to have the bot set up the opponent's setup as well. So we came up with a system, and it basically doubled the length of each scenario because each scenario now for both sides has a setup system that you can use to have the bot set everything up. Now, how exactly is this going to work? Well, the easiest way that we could have done it was just, all right, the computer, I keep wanting to say computer because when I say bot and computer, it's just, we could have just had the bot have the same setup. It's like, all right, this tank will always go in this hex. This squad will always go in this hex. I didn't like that idea. I thought that was boring and lacked replayability. So we needed to come up with some way of having variable setups. So I thought about it, I thought about it, and I drank, and I thought about it, and I drank some more, and thought about it, and drank a lot more. Eventually came up with the system that we're using right now. And as you can see on the screen right there, we've got some counters. We got some black and white counters,
Yep.
white and black counters with numbers. So basically, every scenario will have all the forces broken down into a certain number of groups. And for some of these scenarios, there are 20 or 25 groups because the scenarios are really big. But what will happen is that it will tell you each group will have a corresponding unit. So group 1 will be Lieutenant so-and-so, 2 squads, and a light machine gun. Group 2 will be X, group 3, whatever you have going all the way through. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to take these group numbers. So if there's 4 groups, say there's 12 groups in the scenario, you'll take groups 1 through 12, turn them upside down, and the backs of the counters are the black counter with the white imagery on it.
Okay. Yep.
But you also are going to have, we call them negative contact counters, and those are going to be the white counters with the black infantry on it, but on the back of them are going to be the black with white. So when you place all the counters face down, it's going to be the black counter with the white outline on it.
Yep.
The scenario will tell you, all right, you've got the 14 groups, but there's also going to be, 8, 10, 12 negative contact markers. So you mix them all together. And then there's going to be a series of hexes where you're going to place all these counters on the board. So as you place them all on the board, you're not going to know what is an actual unit or a false contact until after you're done setting up all the units. Then you will go through and flip them all right side up. If it's a group number, then you'll put the group into that hex. If it's a negative contact, which is the white counter with the black, then you just remove it from the board.
Get out
So
of here.
what that does is, instead of having 14 groups and only 14 setup locations, now we've got 14 groups, but maybe 21 different setup locations. Every time you do it, the bot is going to set up differently. And we didn't want it to be too complicated. Again, we wanted to try to keep it light to medium complexity. That was what we came up with. And we even made sure sometimes you'll have multiple groups. Like, well, tanks can't set up in buildings, so tanks are going to have a different setup. So you may have 6 groups of infantry and say 18 different hexes that they could potentially set up in, but you've got 4 tanks and say 8 different hexes that they could potentially set up in. So it's a huge replay. You're never going to have the same setup twice, ever. And
I love that. I love that.
And some people may say, well, I would never set up like that. Again, we don't want you to be playing you. You're trying to play somebody that's not you, and they're probably going to do things that you're not going to do. So
Yep.
this solitaire setup, and believe me, there was a lot of alcohol involved in this as well, does basically make each scenario about twice as long page-wise, because we're trying to put as much variability into it as possible. And honestly, when these setups mostly are my own setups, how I personally would set up the game. Sometimes I'll have a forward defense, middle defense, back defense. Sometimes I'll do a completely forward setup, and that's reflected in how these solitaire scenario setups are written out.
So Lead Magnet asks, can you have a random setup that is not tactically viable? So you're talking about randomize. Would there be something that is just like you flip them over and you place them and you go, what happened here? I mean,
I tried to, when I was setting them up, I tried to make sure that there would never be a situation where, oh, well, there's a tank that is behind a line of forests and can't get out. Now, I made sure that wasn't the situation. Okay. I would pour over the maps. I had the map set up, and I was physically taking the counters and placing, okay, here is my setup. This is how I would set up. This is where my fields of fire would be. All right, now let's vary it a little bit. What are some alternative setups I would do? And I'm marking down hex notes and locations, and basically trying to find the most, not really the most optimum, because with variable setups, you're never going to have an optimum setup. But at least
that's also not reality.
Exactly. But at least, like I said, I did make sure to make that there's not going to be situations where units are not going to be in the fight somewhat. If you've got defensive positions, if there's an objective, you're going to see a cluster of defensives around that being able to put fire on that hex from different positions. So
Perfect.
there might be one or two setups every once in a while that you look at it and say, that doesn't make too much sense. But that's not going to take away from the overall scenario setup.
You're not, it isn't like the hexes are numbered and you're rolling, roll 3d6 and then place each one in a random hex on the map. That's not what
Right.
you're
No,
talking about.
these are,
It is,
it's like, all right, this goes on board 42 hex 8-7, or H7 or what have you. So.
No, I think this is great. I think that, again, from a fan perspective, from an outsider kind of perspective, I think it's awesome. I think it's awesome that you guys are including the solo system, a solo module tailored to this game with the game. It's just one less barrier for people, right? Also think that I think it's really cool, this modular or random setup. This, I hate to say the
Variable setup, not
variable setup,
random,
right? That's
variable.
I don't. It sounds like as I said it, I'm like I don't want to use the word random because random has negative connotations, especially as war gamers, right? I mean, we'll usually have no problem rolling, on a CRT or something, but rolling dice. But when it comes to certain things, right, we're like, no, this has to make sense, and it has to make sense to me, which goes into the solo system you talked about, and the setting up for both. What will the AI do when you're drawing a card and you're looking at it, right? And you're following the instructions. Trust the system, right? So I would say, and that's probably advice for most solitaire games, trust the system, trust that when it's going to do something that you guys have developed it to the point where it's going to work. Now, if there's a problem and you figure something out that's like, hey, this doesn't work at all, like really, I tried it and it just creates it breaks the rules or something. Well, hey, post it online and bring it to everyone's attention and say, hey, what happened here?
One of the reasons why we thought we needed to rewrite the some of the flowcharts and some of the cards, because we are not a very large team. We're a very small team, and there's a saying from computer beta testing that I like to throw out there is like, 1,000 people will find in 10 hours more things than 10 people will find in 1,000 hours. Yep. So we only have a limited number of eyes, and we do appreciate any and all feedback. And so as we've been getting feedback over the years for the solo system, it's like, well, it's kind of missing a hole here. This doesn't really work here. So I kind of want to say we're now taking a more living rulebook approach to not only the rule system, but the solitaire system. We realize that there's always things that we can, and I'm not saying we're going to be completely redoing the rule book every couple of years. We're not. 5.1 is as set as I think it's going to be. And we have no plans for the next 5 to 10 years to touch the main rule book. But like I said, since this solitaire system is going to be something we're going to be including in each box set going forward, that'll give us the opportunity to tweak it between each game depending on the feedback we get from the customers. You can send us, you can post on the forums. Facebook is probably the best place to get a hold of us. We've got our own Discord channel. There's a whole bunch of ways to reach out to us. A lot of times we may not respond, but that doesn't mean we don't see everything. Like I said, we're a very small team, and sometimes we get a little bit overwhelmed and we sometimes don't answer everything that's shot to us. We try to, but it sometimes gets a little bit rough.
No, I get it. Let's see. What else? Is there anything else we need to know that the people you want to share with the people and say, hey, I want you to know about this, about Here's the Bitter Harvest, about the system, about the solo. Is there anything that we haven't covered? I think we've covered a lot of the stuff I think that I wanted to, or everything that I can think of that I wanted to.
We didn't cover the RPG system.
Oh, that's right. Actually, So actually, I was scrolling by it because there's a lot of stuff here.
Yeah, there. Like I said, the box weighs in close to 9 pounds worth.
I believe it. I believe it. Skill cards, data cards. I know. Okay, so the RPG system. Explain it. What are you talking about here? What do you mean RPG?
Basically, the RPG system allows you to play as a leader for either side. It doesn't matter. You can play as the Germans, as the Soviets. It doesn't matter. But you will put yourself in as that counter into the game, and it's perfectly fine. I've already tested all the scenarios. Even if you put one extra leader in, it's not going to throw the balance one way or another. But
Breaks the whole
basically,
game.
yeah, no, I made sure of that. Basically, as you do things in the game, you will keep track and gain experience points for doing things. So, as a leader, if you rally somebody, you'll get a point. If you knock out a tank in close combat, you'll get 10 points. But what will happen is at the end of each game, you'll take all these, and you could lose experience points.
Yep.
It's completely possible. It's like guys under your command failed to rally. You
lose experience points.
Exactly.
Oh,
So you at the end of the game, you take a look at all your experience. As long as your experience is positive, then you're going in the right direction, obviously. And if you get so many experience points, then you get a promotion and your leadership value will get better, or your command modifier will get better, or you'll even learn a skill that you'll be able to keep with you from scenario to scenario. We also have made sure that, okay, if for some reason your character is killed, it's like, no, you're just wounded, knocked out, whatever. You eventually wake up and you can come back into the next scenario. So even if you quote unquote die, I mean, you lose I think you lose like 10 experience points if you quote unquote die, but you can still continue playing with the same leader from scenario to scenario to try to build them up to get them as and like I said, the 826, you're going to be hard pressed to get your leader up to an 826 with a skill or two. But it's just a little something we wanted to throw in. People have said, that they wish there was a little bit more of an RPG element to war games sometimes.
Yeah.
And I mean, we definitely saw that in Space Infantry Resurgence. Space Infantry Resurgence definitely has the feel of a role-playing game.
It does.
And so we just wanted to, if you want to play with it, you can. If you don't want to play with it, you don't have to mess with it. Just ignore it. But it's just something extra we added in because there has been requests for it.
Yeah. We talked about this earlier, is, the feeling of Lock and Load Tactical and the feeling of a lot of your guys' games specifically is building a narrative, right? Telling a story. It's a movie. It's Saving Private Ryan. It's, part of that is the characters, right? Not just a counter that has great artwork on it, but something else, right? A character. So the RPG system kind of built on that, right? Or built a RPG light system of, hey, have that aspect. I know narrative driven solitaire war games are super popular.
Mm-hmm.
I love them. A lot of people do, whether it's B-17 or the newer ones, Target for Today, or, the Hunter
Ambush.
I mean, just like there's all these narrative driven solitaire games. It's easy to make them solitaire, and it tells a story, and everyone then gets to feel like the hero, right? Gets to feel like they're doing this, not just, hey, I'm seeing something on my table, but they're sort of immersed in it a little bit. So I think it's cool. It's a cool system to see that. I imagine there was a bunch of people that were like, hey, this already kind of feels like this. Let's get it in the game if we can, right? You guys have so much in the game. I'm glad that we've been able to talk about, just kind of break it down a little bit of different aspects of it. If anyone who's watching who's tuned in here and they missed the beginning, start at the beginning when we're done, watch from there. We've covered a ton of topics all in this one game, but a lot of different parts of it, aspects of it, since it is such a, what do you say, 7-pound game?
9 pound.
9 pound. God, 9 pound. It's a large baby. So what did I forget? Anything else we haven't covered yet?
There probably was something that we missed. There's so much more we could have talked about, but talking about the solo system and the RPG system, those were two of the things. We didn't talk about the data cards that we've added in to make people's lives a little bit easier. All the player aid cards.
More information on each counter that's in the game, correct? Like a unit.
Yep, with rules references and it's just it worked really well for the World at War system, and so we just went ahead and decided. And those are tarot size cards. Those are not player cards. Those are actual. These cards are huge.
The data cards.
The data cards. Yes.
Okay. Nice. Okay. Yeah.
So big fonts on them, so you can read it. So you don't have to try. It's like, all right, I know that's a pack 38. I don't want to get out. Oh, here's the data data card for it. It's really huge, like 18-point font. Okay, I know what the stats for it are. Here's the rules references. Here's what it can do. Here's what it breaks down to. It's just, again, trying to make the gameplay easier for people.
And I think that's good for new players. It's good for, new-ish players, right? It's good for, and people have been playing a little while but don't have it memorized, right? Don't have everything memorized, right? That, I think that when you look at a game like Lock and Load Tactical, I think that some people view it as a lifestyle game, right? So that's ASL, right? Like and I think that the negative connotation to a lifestyle game, or what people view these lifestyle war games, is that that's the only game that you're going to have time for, that if you want to play it, you have to devote, all of your hobby time towards it, to learning it, playing it, and you won't have time for anything else. Well, I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true for most games. Maybe ASL, I have no experience with it. I'm not going to comment on that, but
ASL is a lifestyle game.
That's a true lifestyle game. So that probably is, right? But that's also heavy.
I mean, for the people who want to play it, it's a great game. And like I said, I played it for 30 years off and on, but I just got tired of feeling like I gave birth to an accountant every time I played. It's like, I got to find something easier. I got to find something more my speed. There were several games I could have settled on, and eventually at the end, Lock and Load Tactical was the game that won out for me. It's got enough meat on its bones that I am happy playing it, and that it does satisfy my ASL itch, but it's not so heavy that I can walk away from the game for 6-7 months, come back, and be able to get back into the rules relatively quickly.
Yep, definitely. I mean, it looks good to me. Really glad that we got to go over all the Solitaire stuff, because as soon as I learned more and I saw it, I said, okay, another Lock and Load Tactical game. I didn't know right away, because as you don't know, right? We don't.
Yeah, right.
You guys know what your game is going to offer. We don't, right? As fans and everything, we just see it pop up. Hey, the next game in the series. Okay, well, it's just a different theme. Well, actually, you're including all these different aspects, from everything from the RPG system, the extra data cards, to the whole Solitaire system built in the game. And we,
that is the one thing I neglected to mention. It can also be used for miniature play as well, because it's got all the stats right there on it. So whatever scale you want to play, I'm going to assume most people, if they're going to do this in miniature, it's going to be 15 millimeter. You just you don't have to worry about having the counters out there. There's the miniature. Here's the card for it. There's all the stats for it, and it's all set.
I wish. I don't think Tim, a different Tim, is here today. This is kind of an ongoing joke that he mentions miniature gaming, and I'm like, well, you're banned then if you mention miniature gaming. But I won't ban you, or I won't ban.
Appreciate it.
It's Wayne, why are you so anti-miniature? I'm not anti-miniature gaming. I just do not have time in my life for another freaking hobby. That especially,
I understand that.
Clipping counters takes too long in my mind. Much less now I have to paint things before I can even play. Oh my god! Like, I don't. My wife will kill me. That's so. Before we end things, Devin, if you don't mind, outside of Lock and Load, unless this is it, what other games have you played recently? What's something you played? Wargaming, maybe outside Lock and Load Publishing, or do you play anything else? Is it just
I don't understand the question. There are other games other than Lock and Load Publishing games? No.
Like twice if you need help, and I'll send help.
I actually just got done playing a scenario from 7th Fleet, the old Victory game 7th Fleet, not too long ago. Okay. I do a lot of Lock and Load. I've got a copy. We've got a new game that we're releasing, a Stuka Solitaire game, which I'm sure you and I are probably going to be talking about at some point in the future.
Yes,
that's on the table right now as I'm play testing. It was really great. It was funny because I was going through the rule book, making sure that the rule book was laid out properly, and that normal gamers could understand it, and the sequence of play is correct, and all that other stuff. And so after all that was done, I actually sat down and started playing. And David will get a chuckle at us because I told David this yesterday. It's like, my first mission, Poland, 1939. I'm in a Stuka. I'm going out. I'm diving a gun emplacement, and I don't pull up from the dive and crash. Very first time out. It's like, all right, I know what I did wrong with that one. Well, let's reset it and do it again. So it's not so much that I crashed, but I think the anti-aircraft guns got me as I was trying to pull out of the dive.
Oh yeah, it wasn't your fault at all. It was
not at all.
My flying was perfect. They got lucky shot.
exactly.
A narrative style game? We don't have to talk about it too much. We can save that. But is it like a narrative style game, or is it?
It
It
is.
sounds like it, kind of.
You start off piloting your own Stuka, and we don't want to get too deep in this because
No, no, no,
it's
no,
still
no,
in the early
no, no,
stages.
no.
You start off by piloting your own Stuka, so there is a narrative element there because
Okay.
you're going through several steps of flying to the target. Random events could happen. Then there's actually bombing a target. You have to decide. Well, it's a dive
Very
bomber.
cool.
Do I bomb from high? Do I wait to get lower? And that'll have effects on the dice rolls, and if you actually hit the target, and if you're actually able to successfully pull up, like I failed to. I think there's a very strong narrative element because you can start as far back as the Spanish Civil War in 1938 and go all the way up through 1944 in Russia. We've got several different campaigns: the invasion of Crete, actions in North Africa, Norway, the bombing of England. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there.
Oh, cool.
So I think it's narrative, but
Yeah.
again, I may be a little bit biased on that. Other than that, I do a lot of computer wargaming. Since I do tabletop wargaming so much for work, it's sometimes hard for me to just.
You're like stress relief. You're getting away from it is not to play a war game paper wise, right? It's to do on the computer.
Yeah, for mostly I play a lot of Stellaris. I play a lot of Stellaris.
So I played
I've got
Stellaris, but I'm not. It gets overwhelming, man. I'm like, I can't. My brain gets overwhelmed by it. I get this epic galaxy, all this stuff. I'm like, so I start like kind of speeding through it, and then stuff's happening. I almost get annoyed because I'm like, I can't keep up with all this every turn. I got to click all this stuff, so I get a little. But I do trace back to like Civilization on the computer.
yeah.
Used to
I've
play
done a
all these
lot of Civ of that.
Civ
Yeah.
6, Civ, I think Civ 4 was probably the first one or Civ 3. No, Civ 3 was the first one I got into that I really was like, whoa, this is awesome. But Stellaris, yep. Played that a bunch. I played it a bunch. I probably only played it like 60 hours, which I'm sure you probably have 6,000 hours in it.
I'm closing in on 2,500 hours for Stellaris. Yeah.
Well, and that's one of those games. You talk about lifestyle game practically, right?
Yeah, that is that. Well, and the good thing, probably half of that is multiplayer I do with my friends. So,
Yeah.
But my other outlet, again, along with computer games, I've also been doing a lot of. They re-released the Dungeons and Dragons Gold Box series on Steam. The old original 1988, 1989 Gold Box, Pools of Radiance, Eye of the Beholder.
Yeah.
So I went.
I was a young pup, but I played them on my buddy had a computer. His family had a computer. And I remember I was a young pup, but that was one of my first tastes of Dungeons and Dragons. So, which I do have. Oh, yeah. I do not actually play it, but there's some D&D books right up in here behind my bald head. 5th edition, but I literally don't even think I played 5th edition. I just picked up the books with the hope that one day I would actually get it played. Yeah, right. Considering I play solitaire war games all the time, yeah, good luck finding people to play anything else with. So,
oh yeah,
I'm the same way though when it comes to kind of for me. So for me, it's my stress relief and my getting away from it and getting away from thinking my hobby that really is different than what I'm used to is doing this, right? Doing the tabletop games, right? My day job, I work with people, and then I'm on a computer, like in between, right? It's people, and then it's typing reports, and then it's people, and then it's my MDT in my car, and it's this and this, and it's like, so it's like I solitaire because now I don't have to deal with people anymore, and then paper. It's one reason I've been very resistant to like Vassal. A lot of times I'm asked like, what about this Vassal game? What about now I do play computer games, right? But it's not the war games I play. Like I said, I'm mentioning I play some Stellaris, Civilization. Yes, I play Call of Duty and things like that, although I suck against these kids nowadays that are hyped up on G Fuel and, I'm too old for that. I can't keep up with that. I got my controller going and my thumbs are broken by the end of it. But, I play random RPGs, stuff like that. But, man, I love to sit down with a nice game, get it set up back here. And besides showing it off on the channel, I just love playing. I love learning it, looking at the rule book, the history. If it's something I don't know a lot about the history and even things I think I know a lot about, I can learn more, right? I think it's for most of us. So I'll watch a documentary. I have a TV up here, with YouTube and Netflix. And I'll try to watch a documentary, watch them on YouTube about the battle, read a book, and just kind of get into the history. So that's my thing. That's my connection to wargaming, and then solitaire wargaming in particular. So any parting thoughts there, Devin, before
go buy my game?
Check it out, everybody. Yeah, so it is on GameFound. It is on GameFound. Pull it up one last time before we somewhere in there. on GameFound right now. I know the link is in the description. Let me post it again in the chat. Check it out. Make your decision, people. Do you like it based on this? What me and Devin have talked about all for over an hour now. But there's a lot to cover, and there's a lot to the game, and so definitely looks like you're getting a lot with the game. Check it out. Only 4 days left now. Oh, from 5 to 4.
Flipped over. Yep, past 11 o'clock. That's
now.
the
I was say
timer.
David's over there running the counter down, trying to get people. Homo, better back it now. So, well, thanks for coming on, Devin.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Absolutely. I'm sure you mentioned the Stuka, which got me going. Doop, doop. My ears perked up. Talk about that. I know that there's also, it's already been funded. It's coming soon. You guys have another Solitaire game. V is for victory.
Point blank. V for victory.
Blank,
yeah. For those of you who know about it that are backing it, China just got back to us. They should have it on the containers in 2 or 3 weeks.
Ooh.
Now, how long that'll take for the container ships to get to us, not sure, but it's happening a lot faster than we had originally planned. So it is coming. It's coming quickly.
Awesome. I'm sure people, when it comes to these games, we back, and as a person who has back games that I'm either was waiting for that took a little longer or whatever, you always are anxious to get them right, regardless of the reason. Very valid reasons, right? Shipping and overseas shipping and production in other countries.
I don't care. I want it now.
I want it now. I want it now. So, all right. Well, thanks again, Devin, and thanks everyone who tuned in and who asked questions. And go check out the game on GameFound. So. But until next time, everybody, later.